Hello everyone, this is Killerduki. For the first time I'm testing out my personal speech and I will try to present you few and short details about vanilla or let's say Legacy World of Warcraft spec and class guide. First I will start with damage dealers or like many call it DPS. Warriors. Well, usually in all private servers, including Nostarius, they have beneficial bags and receive too much rage. This makes Fury Warriors so overpowered compared to Blizzard, or let's say original game. If they get fixed rage, they will hack on the paladins on DPS and do low damage. But until then, Fury Warriors are one of the most overpowered melee in vanilla WoW. Rogues. They are kinda so overpowered on DPS, especially on the bosses DPS and stuff like that. They can remove traps in, let's say, BVL on the suppression room, and they are very good on interruptions, and they are most welcome mainly for this because there are some bosses like the last boss in Nax that require a lot of interrupts, and the rate depend on the interrupts and stuff like that. They are overall very good on DPS, and subs are not always welcome in the raids, but still use it. Anyway, they are overpowered melee DPS, and they are mainly on the top on the damage list. Let's say next, mages. They are decent at the beginning because Frost is the inferior spec to fire, and tier 1 and tier 2 raids like BBL Montecore Onyxia are high resistant or immune on fire. Like some bosses are high resistance, they are not immune, but many of the bosses are immune on fire. And they are actually the best range, one of the best range DPS on the high end raids such as Nax 40, AQ40 and 20, Zul'Gurub, and they are extremely good on AoE DPS like Flame Strike and Blizzard, stuff like that. The next, Warlocks. They are a bit boring in my opinion. At the beginning they are not doing much DPS mainly because of the starting patches. They don't have so much debuffs, and that is the main barrier for them. But later when you have 16 slot debuffs, and they are the most overpowered casters overall in the high-end raids, and they are extremely good in AoE. They can tank AoE, and they are also needed for twins to tank the range boss and stuff like that. Druids. Lots of bugs, many unknown within the private servers. They boost melee and spell crit band if they are moonkin, or let's say boomkin. They boost your spell critical. If they are feral cat, which are very weak on melee DPS, they can increase your melee crit. And as moonkin, they have very big problems with mana unless they have AQ40 or high-end gear that will boost their mana and their DPS to improve. Like until AQ40 and next, they are quite low, and they are not always welcome in the raid as DPS. Paladins. They are extremely good on trash DPS, and they are extremely good AoE DPS as a melee. But other than that, they are not so good on DPS on the main target, and they are just a decent damage dealers. Many can argue that they are very low, but this is mainly because they require so much skills for that, and they have to try hard in order to manage to do nice DPS. Their gear is a bit complicated, and they are also not welcome, mainly because they can't be top DPS over the warriors and the rogues. And sadly and unfortunately, within the private servers they are extremely bugged and doesn't bring any special utility other than AoE and buffs, which the healers can do the same. Hunters. Hunters are very weak on DPS. They have a lot of bugs with their pets, but they are welcome mainly because of chunk shot, kiting and traps. Nothing specific about them. There's so much hunters and not much needed in raid, like 2 or 3 hunters are enough for one raid, depend on the guild and the raid setup. Other than that, they are weak on DPS. Priests, they are decent DPS, but they are not much welcome, mainly because they take so much debuff slots and require extremely high skills and consumes if you want to do the job, like to survive with your mana and boost the warlocks and stuff like that. There is usually one shadow priest in the raid, unfortunately, just to boost the warlocks with shadow weaving and vampiric embrace. But other than that, they are not much welcome. So basically you can see only one shadow priest within the raid. Shamans, they are very much bugged, and like shadow priest, boomkits and retribution, they also starve with mana as a range. As a melee, they are not so OP DPS, but they bring extremely good utility for melee, called Wind Fury. Sadly and unfortunately, Wind Fury is most famous within the private servers as a buget that doesn't work properly, and this makes shamans very useless as a damage dealers. That's it for DPS. Now I step to healers. Priest. They are best healers overall. At the beginning they are a bit weak due to mana starve, but at the high end and medium rates are very overpowered. You want to play dwarf because it brings the best utility in a game as a healer, called Fear Ward, which is the most wanted and unique buff that gives you always spot in the raids. For that reason, there are many boss fights that require immune fear, such as Nefarian, Bactrio and stuff like that, and the tanks really need your fear word. Usually 2 dwarf priests are enough for that in the raid, but always more are welcome. Paladins, they are very good with mana and tank healing. You can argue they might be the best tank healers since they can spam heals for quite a long time without getting you. They are bad on AoE healer because they don't have AoE healing, and gives nice utilities such as salvation, kings, and depend on their spells they can give you sanctuary or whatever. Druids, they have nice mana regeneration and are very good for speedruns. At the beginning their heals are weak, but at high end I can say personally they are the best healers proven on some previous private servers seen with Nax clearing such as Phoenix, and sadly they are most unwanted healers for 5-man because they don't have a proper resurrection, but they brings very good utility for raids such as Innervate and Combat Race. Innervate can be used on the priest healers because they are starving with the mana, and the Combat Race is always welcome if your main tank or off tank die, and it's saving the raid. Shamans, they are good because of their totems. They can give you a lot of benefits from that, but they have weak heals and problems with mana. They are good for melee healing mainly because of chain healings and stuff like that, but require also nice skills for them. Tanks. Warriors. They are the best tanks mainly because of the taunt and the surviving abilities such as shield wall, last stand and shield block to remove the crushing blow from the list. Their high end tier also gives the very tanking stats. They are decent on threats, mainly because in all private servers they have bugged rage benefits. Otherwise, if the rage get fixed and work as a blizz, they have huge problems with threats on the main target. Other than that, they are the only tanks that people usually bring, mainly because of the taunt and the shield balls, stuff like that. Paladins, they're not always welcome, but they are the best AoE tanks. They require extremely good skills and proper mana management as a tanks, otherwise you will starve with mana and you will lose so much. Not recommended if you are not familiar about them so much. Not always accepted in the raid, but they are also the most bugged spec class in the game, and also they are the best threats tanks if you are able to manage good your gear consumes and talents and rotations. They have unique utilities such as blessing of protection that can be used as a taunt because they don't have a taunt, which also protects your target, and they have a divine protection that will remove your deadly debuffs that can be secured that for any other tank, such as golem mag debuffs and stuff like that. Very complicated and hard spec to understand, and many fail to comprehend the game style, so you're not welcome much in raids for that reason. You can be very good as an off tank because you're making so much threats without tanking the target, and if you're in case your main tank die, you can be second on a threat saving the raid. That's it. Druids, they are very good off tanks, immune on polymorphs on bosses such as Jindo, and can be so useful on several encounters such as Patchwork, Soaking, Hateful Strike. They are complicated spec to play and not always welcome in raids for such reason. They have big problems with bugged dodge scaling in private servers that makes them weaker than they should be. Also, they don't have a defense cap, and this is the reason why many avoid druids as a tank. But also they are only tanks that can reach armor cap. Their utility is huge stamina pool in a raid and melee crit. Hope you like my amateurish guide and have a nice day.